Namaskar, hello and welcome to Sansad TV. I am Teena Jha with the news. Over the next 30 minutes, I'll be taking you through the big stories from across India and the world. Let's begin with the headlines. All nations need to deliver on climate commitments, asserts Prime Minister Modi at Global Summit on World Sustainable Development. Finance Ministry's monthly economic review predicts India will clock quickest growth among all large nations in the year 2023. India's disco king BAPPI LAHIRI passes away in Mumbai. President Ramnath Kovind, Vice President M. Venkaiah Naidu and Prime Minister Narendra Modi mourn the loss. Cyber attacks increase against Ukrainian government, ministries and banks. The US claims there is no evidence of Russia's troop pullout. And India play West Indies in the first 2020 International at Eden Gardens in Kolkata. So before we get you details on the big stories of the day, a quick run-through of what made news through the day. Milestone for Jal Jeevan Mission, 9 crore rural homes provided tap water across the country. CBDT refunds over 1.71 lakh crore rupees to over 1 crore 97 lakh taxpayers. Global oil prices steady over reports of troop pullback by Russia. Multiple tax searches at the premises of Chinese company HUAWEI in Delhi, Gurugram and Bengaluru. Assam Chief Minister Himanta Biswa Sarma booked for comments on Rahul Gandhi in Hyderabad. 45th Chennai Book Fair kicks off. Special arrangements made for visitors in view of the COVID pandemic. Assam to launch web portal to invite suggestions for change of names of cities, towns and villages. Jammu and Kashmir State Investigation Agency arrests 10 Jaish-e-Mohammed terrorists. UGC to declare the results of National Eligibility Test NET in a day or two. And Delhi High Court refuses to suspend 7-year jail term of Ansal brothers in Upahar evidence tampering case. Prime Minister Narendra Modi delivered the inaugural address at the World Sustainable Development Summit organized by the Energy and Resources Institute on Wednesday. The theme at TERI's annual flagship event is Towards a Resilient Planet, Ensuring a Sustainable and Equitable Future. Issues including climate change, sustainable production, energy transitions and resource security were taken up. The 3-day summit is being attended by heads of intergovernmental organizations, ministers and envoys from over 12 countries and delegates from 120 countries.
This global movement of pro-planet people, 3 Ps, is the coalition for life. These 3 global coalitions will form the trinity of our environment efforts for improving the global commons. Equitable energy access to the poor has been a cornerstone of our environmental policy.
Some other national news. Assam Chief Minister Himanta Biswa Sarma has said the state government will launch a web portal to invite suggestions for a change of names of cities, towns and villages that are contrary to our civilization and culture and derogatory to any caste or community. In a Twitter message, he said the name of a city, town or village should represent its culture, tradition and civilization. Union Home Minister Amit Shah told the Delhi police to prepare a roadmap for the next 5 years and also for 25 years with well-defined goals. He was addressing the Delhi Police Raising Day celebrations, where he also congratulated the Delhi Police for its investigation of the Northeast Delhi riots.
और संकल्प का वर्ष इस दृष्टि से कि सभी देशवासी 130 करोड़ लोग इस वर्ष में एक संकल्प ले जो हमारे देश को आगे बढ़ाने वाला हो, जो हमारे देश को और मजबूत करने वाला हो, जो हमारे देश को समृद्ध करने वाला हो, जो हमारे देश को शिक्षित करने वाला हो और हमारे देश को स्वस्थ बनाने वाला हो। 130 करोड़ लोगों के संकल्प का संपुट जब हम आजादी की शताब्दी मनाएंगे तब ये संकल्प देश को दुनिया में सर्वोच्च स्थान पर बिठाएंगे, इसका हम सबको विश्वास है।
Schools for primary and upper primary students reopened in West Bengal on Wednesday, almost 2 years after the COVID-19 pandemic forced the closure of educational institutes in March 2020. High and higher secondary institutes reopened after a drop in number of COVID cases. The birth anniversary of Sant Ravidas was celebrated across the country. The 14th century saint was the founder of the Bhakti movement in North India. The President, the Vice President and the Prime Minister greeted citizens on the day. Prime Minister Modi also offered prayers at the Sri Guru Ravidas Vishram Dham Mandir in Karol Bagh in Delhi. He said Sant Ravidas devoted his entire life to eradicate evils like casteism and untouchability. Uttar Pradesh Chief Minister Yogi Adityanath offered prayers at Sir Govardhanpur, the birthplace of Sant Ravidas in Varanasi. Punjab Chief Minister and Congress leader Charanjit Singh Channi paid tributes to the saint at Sir Govardhan. He also sought the blessings of Sant Niranjan Das. Former Congress President Rahul Gandhi and current General Secretary Priyanka Gandhi also paid their respects to Guru Ravidas in Varanasi. They listened to Amrit Vani and took prasad at the venue. News now from across states. Prime Minister Narendra Modi will inaugurate a bio-CNG plant in Indore, the cleanest city of the country, on 19 February. It will service nearly 400 city buses daily with eco-friendly fuel. The Income Tax Department conducted searches at the premises of Chinese telecom company HUAWEI as part of a tax evasion probe. Officials collected financial documents of the company at its Delhi, Gurugram and Bengaluru addresses. The Delhi High Court dismissed the Ansal brothers' petition to suspend the 7-year jail term in the Upahar cinema evidence tampering case. The Sessions Court observed that the matter was very serious and a deliberate conspiracy by the convicts to interfere with justice. Karnataka Assembly proceedings were deadlocked over the hijab issue on Wednesday. Heated arguments broke out between the ruling BJP and the opposition Congress MLAs in the House. Leader of opposition Siddaramaiah criticized the Chief Minister for his silence on the matter. The Army's first ever all-women officers offshore sailing expedition left Chennai port on Tuesday. It was flagged off by Governor of Telangana, Tamilisai Sundararajan. And a look now at what's happening in the poll-bound states. Prime Minister Narendra Modi addressed rallies in election-bound Uttar Pradesh and Punjab. He told voters in Pathankot that a BJP government in the state will make agriculture, trade and industry profitable in 5 years. Polling in the state will take place on the 20th of February.
वो पहला मौका चूक गए विभाजन के समय, दूसरा मौका चूक गए 65 की लड़ाई में, और फिर बांग्लादेश की लड़ाई हुई। 90,000 सैनिक हमारी कैद में थे, हिंदुस्तान की कैद में थे। अगर दिल्ली में बैठी हुई सरकार में दम होता तो उनको कह देते कि 90,000 सैनिक तुम्हें तब मिलेंगे जब हमें हमारे गुरु नानक देव की तपोभूमि वापस मिलेगी।
Continuing with election news from the poll-bound states. Taking a dig at opposition parties in Kanpur, Defence Minister Rajnath Singh said illegal weapons used to be made in the city under earlier governments. Now missiles will be made for the defense of the nation. He added that the opposition is only interested in defaming the country. At an election rally in Hamirpur, Uttar Pradesh Chief Minister Yogi Adityanath said voters have put the SP, BSP and Congress out of contention. He also said in a similar fashion, his government had bottled up the COVID-19 genie. BSP President Mayawati targeted the BJP, the Congress and also the Samajwadi Party at a poll rally in Lucknow. She said the casteist mindset of these parties towards Dalits and backwards has been exposed. The BJP released a list of 3 more candidates for Uttar Pradesh. 2 candidates were declared for Sonbhadra district and 1 candidate in Varanasi district. Sonbhadra and Varanasi go to polls in the 7th phase on 7th March. BJP leaders led by Union Minister Anurag Thakur filed a complaint with the Election Commission for the attack on the convoy of Minister of State SP Singh Baghel on Tuesday. Baghel's convoy was attacked in Karhal area of Mainpuri in Uttar Pradesh. 1 person has been arrested. An FIR was filed against a BJP candidate, 26 nominees and 250 others in connection with the firing at the house of Roshan Lal Verma. Verma is the Samajwadi Party candidate from Tilhar in Shahjahanpur district of Uttar Pradesh. News now from the world of business and economy. India will clock the quickest growth among all large nations in the year 2023, according to the Finance Ministry's monthly economic review. The report says the end of the third COVID wave and increasing vaccination augurs well for inclusive growth in FY23. Agriculture will see a growth in net sown area, while crop diversification will strengthen buffer food stocks. The report says the Union Budget 2022-23 has firmed the direction set for the economy by the previous year's Union Budget. Rising consumption and employment generation by government's capex will also induce private investment. PLI schemes in 14 sectors will further incentivize private investment to achieve higher exports and viable import substitution. Time for a quick break here, but coming up on the other side, truckers defy administration in Canada, refuse to call off protests despite emergency announcement. Details when we return. Welcome back. Singapore's biennial air show opened on a smaller scale than before the pandemic. It comes as the aviation sector gears up for a recovery 2 years after coronavirus outbreaks nearly paralyzed air travel. India's own Tejas light combat aircraft proved to be one of the showstoppers.
A 3-day air show kicked off in Singapore on Tuesday. While the general public is not allowed to attend, 600 exhibitors are attending the show. A came down from 930 exhibitors in the last show held 2 years ago in Feb 2020 when the COVID cases were just starting to rise. Boeing's newest wide-body jet, the 777X, made its Asian debut at this year's show, demonstrating aerial maneuvers during a daily flight display. India's homegrown Tejas light combat aircraft also displayed its superior flying skills. Experts say the aviation market is poised for recovery, with defense spending on the rise and commercial aviation picking up despite the latest wave of Omicron infections. Bureau Report, Sansad TV.
And time now for all the global updates. The biggest global story, despite Russia's claims that it is pulling back its troops, fears of an incursion continue to haunt global powers. The United States and other Western countries have said there is no evidence of Russian troop pullback. Indian authorities, meanwhile, are making efforts to enable Indians to leave Ukraine.
Russia on Wednesday announced the end of Crimea military drills. Its defense ministry shared a video of Russian military equipments and forces leaving Crimea. But on Wednesday, in a televised address, US President Joe Biden called reports of the troop pullback unverified. He also revised the number of Russian troops encircling Ukraine from 1 lakh to 1.5 lakhs. The United States warned that a Russian invasion of Ukraine is still a distant possibility.
The United States and NATO are not a threat to Russia. Ukraine is not threatening Russia. Neither the US nor NATO have missiles in Ukraine. We do not have plans to put them there as well. We're not targeting the people of Russia.
Meanwhile, a series of cyber attacks on Tuesday knocked websites of the Ukrainian army, the defense ministry, and the major banks offline. At least 10 Ukrainian ministry websites were unreachable along with its two largest state banks. Western diplomats said cyber attacks were a long-standing component of Russia's strategy and had been used by Moscow in past military confrontations with Georgia and Ukraine. Joe Biden also acknowledged that US and allied sanctions on Russia in retaliation for an invasion of Ukraine will have significant blowback on the American economy, including possible price hikes and disruption to the nation's energy supply.
The United States and our allies and partners will respond decisively. The West is united and galvanized. Today, our NATO allies and the alliance is as unified and determined as it has ever been. And the source of our unbreakable strength continues to be the power, resilience, and universal appeal of our shared democratic values.
Wednesday marked the Unity Day for Ukraine, chosen by the Ukrainian president on US projections of a military incursion on the day. Citizens were told to display national flags and don blue and yellow ribbons to demonstrate the nation's unity to the entire world. Bureau Report, Sansad TV.
Moving to Canada now, where the truckers stayed put outside the Parliament buildings in Ottawa on Tuesday, a day after Prime Minister Justin Trudeau invoked extraordinary emergency powers to end their protest. Now, these powers allow the government to ban blockades at border crossings, airports, and in Ottawa, freeze truckers' personal and corporate bank accounts, and also suspend their licenses, besides targeting crowdfunding sites that are being used to support these blockades. The defiant protesters are decrying vaccine mandates for truckers and other COVID-19 precautions. Ottawa's police chief, meanwhile, resigned from his job after failing to move decisively against the truck drivers. Acknowledging the resignation, Canada's public safety minister decried the protests, saying an integrated command centre had been set up to give provincial and federal authorities all of the tools that are necessary to restore public order in Ottawa. And in other news from around the world, Cuban citizens are discussing the government's revision of the country's Cuban Family Code that legalizes homosexual marriage and the right to adopt by gay couples. Some 78,000 community meetings are expected to encompass all residents on the island till 30th of April. Recommendations will be forwarded to Cuba's National Assembly and a plebiscite will be held later this year. The draft of the code also recognizes the rights of grandparents as well as giving children greater participation in decisions that concern them. While evangelical groups are refusing to accept same-sex marriages, the LGBT community rejects the idea that their rights should be put to a vote. At least 18 people died in mudslides and floods when torrential rain swept a mountainous region of Brazil's Rio de Janeiro state. The death toll is expected to rise as searchers continue to check damaged areas. Cars and houses were dragged away by the landslides, while water swirled through the city of Petrópolis and neighboring districts. The State Fire Department said more than 180 soldiers were working in the stricken region, which got more than 10 inches of rain within 3 hours on Tuesday, almost as much as during the previous 30 days combined. Dozens of beaches near Lima are still devastated and thousands of fishermen are without work 1 month after an oil spill in Peru. The United Nations called the local refinery-created spill the worst ecological disaster in the nation's history. The cleanup is going slowly, with Peruvian authorities saying less than a quarter of the 11,900 barrels spilled into the Pacific Ocean on the 15th of January has been collected. Spanish oil company Repsol claims only 10,300 barrels spilled, that day at its La Pampilla refinery in front of the Peruvian capital city. Thousands of fishermen are unable to harvest the fish and shellfish from the 44 square miles affected by the spill. A multidisciplinary team of the has analyzed the chocolate-colored foam bobs on the water as a product of the physical-chemical reaction between the spilled oil and moving seawater. A female humpback whale traveling with a male and a calf was freed in Hawaii after it was found entangled in a line with a large bundle of marine debris attached. The National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration said the whale was swimming in the Hawaiian Islands. Humpback Whale National Marine Sanctuary off Maui, a 500-feet line was wrapped tightly around the humpback's head. The agency said tight wraps on the head are dangerous to the response teams that approach the whales to cut the animals free. The line was tangled with various kinds of marine debris that accumulates in the waters around Hawaii. And let's now get you some sports news. So let's start with football today. Kylian Mbappe scored a stunning individual goal in stoppage time to give Paris Saint-Germain a 1-0 home victory over Real Madrid and spare Lionel Messi the blushes after he missed a penalty in their Champions League last 16 first leg on Tuesday. It took PSG 94 minutes to find the winner with a brilliant run by Mbappe, who danced in between two defenders and calmly slid the ball into the far corner to earn PSG a deserved victory. Portuguese midfielder Bernardo Silva scored a double for English club Manchester City, who scored a 5-0 win over Sporting Lisbon in their Champions League last 16 first leg encounter. Manchester City were dominant from start to finish in the Portuguese capital to all but seal their spot in the quarterfinals with a 5-goal victory, the joint biggest winning margin in a Champions League knockout game. Silva scored his first ever Champions League brace and his first goals in the competition in almost a year in a vintage display. Moving to cricket, we all know how important are bowlers in winning test matches. In what looks like a long-term view, the Indian Cricket Board, BCCI, is devising a plan to offer contracts to pacers and spinners beyond the ones centrally contracted with the board. Plans are afoot to hand contracts to 10 pacers and spinners each in both men's and women's cricket. These cricketers will be groomed by the National Cricket Academy. So from football and cricket pitches, let's now move to the beaches. American Kelly Slater continued his fine start to the World Surf League Championship Tour season, surviving a tough day on Tuesday to reach round of 32 of the Hurley Pro Sunset Beach. Now 50 years old, the American backed up his incredible victory at Pipeline in the opening round of the WSL a week ago by coming through an elimination round against South Africa's Matthew McGillivray and Koa Smith of the US. McGillivray will now face Slater again in a much-anticipated round 3 matchup. In ice hockey, Slovakia claimed a shock shootout win over the United States to reach the semi-finals of the men's competition at the Beijing Winter Games today to set up a chance of claiming the country's first ever Olympic medal in the sport. Peter Cehlarik clinched the victory as the only skater to score in the nail-biting shootout by beating US netminder Strassman after overtime ended with the score tied at 2-2. After Cehlarik scored, the US had one last chance to extend the shootout, but captain Andy Milley couldn't beat netminder Patrick Rebard. After the Lakshya Sen-led Indian men's team disappointed on day one of the Badminton Asia Team Championships 2022, Indian women performed much better but still lost to Malaysia. Despite solid wins from Ashmita Chalia and Tara Shah, the Indian women's team could not win the 5-match tie and went down 2-3. The men's team were drubbed 5-0 by Korea on the first day of the championships. Today, the Indian women's team brought some smiles back in the Indian contingent. Akarshi played a close match and almost won, but it was Ashmita and Tara who really shone and gave India 2 solid wins against Malaysia today. The loss of the double match cost India the tie. India's undisputed disco king and the most popular music director of the 80s and 90s, BAPPI LAHIRI, died on Tuesday at a hospital in Mumbai. President Ramnath Kovind, Vice President Venkaiah Naidu, also Prime Minister Narendra Modi mourned the loss of the music legend.
Indian disco legend BAPPI LAHIRI passed away in a hospital in Mumbai. He was discharged on Monday after a month in hospital for multiple health issues. But his health deteriorated on Tuesday and he was brought to hospital where he died shortly before midnight. BAPPI LAHIRI's synthesized disco beats were a rage in the 80s and the 90s. A pioneer of disco music in Bollywood, he composed super-hit soundtracks for films like Disco Dancer, Dance Dance, Chalte Chalte and Namak Halal. He also composed extensively for Bengali cinema. A striking figure in gold chains and sunglasses, BAPPI LAHIRI sang several of his own compositions. Some of his hit tracks include Koi Yahan Nache Nache from Disco Dancer and Pyar Bina Chain Kahan Re from Sahib. However, people remember him today for his immortal adieu song. Chalte Chalte, Mere Ye Geet Yaad Rakhna, Kabhi Alvida Na Kehna.
And before we wrap up the bulletin, a quick relook at the headlines. Prime Minister Modi delivers inaugural address at Summit on World Sustainable Development. The three-day global event is themed towards a resilient planet, ensuring a sustainable and equitable future. The Finance Ministry's monthly economic review projects India will clock quickest growth among all large nations in the year 2023. India's disco king BAPPI LAHIRI passes away in Mumbai. President Ramnath Kovind, Vice President M. Venkaiah Naidu and Prime Minister Modi mourn the loss. Cyber attacks increase against Ukrainian government, ministries and banks. The US claims there is no evidence of Russia's troop pullout. And India take on the West Indies in the first 2020 International at Eden Gardens in Kolkata. So that's it from us in this bulletin. Thanks very much for your time.